Welcome back to the Unseen Wisdom. You know, if you've been following the news here in South Africa recently, it's been hard to ignore some really troubling stories.
Absolutely. Things seem to be bubbling up around religious institutions.
Exactly. Serious allegations and often this feeling that there's just no real accountability. You might remember the Omotoso case.
Oh, yeah. Big news. An acquittal, despite, what was it, alleged 32 counts.
That's the one. And then there were those reports about Pastor Zondo's cases just sort of vanishing.
That too. And Bushiri leaving the country, of course.
Okay.
After the stampede and all the other legal issues that followed.
Right. So it really makes you wonder, with these headlines popping up, what's actually being done? Are there mechanisms to ensure accountability to protect people?
And that's exactly what we want to get into today. We've been looking at various reports, especially focusing on the CRL Rights Commission and how they respond.
CRL, right?
Yeah, our mission here is really to unpack these complexities. What are the problems? What solutions are being proposed? Specifically, what's the CRL doing?
Okay, so the CRL Rights Commission, for anyone maybe not fully up to speed, that's the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities.
Bit of a mouthful, but yeah.
Their job, basically, is to protect those rights, protect religion itself, but that doesn't necessarily mean protecting the actions of everyone involved in religion, right?
Precisely. They protect the right to practice religion, but the behavior of practitioners.
Oh.
That's where things get complicated.
Ooh.
And their latest approach is, well, it's interesting.
How so?
Well, they've announced this Section 22 committee. Think of it like a peer review body, but specifically for the Christian faith.
Peer review. So like doctors reviewing doctors or lawyers reviewing lawyers, but for pastors.
Kind of, yeah. The idea is for respected Christian leaders to look into transgressions within their own community, hold each other accountable.
And what's the CRL's part in this? Are they on the committee?
No. And this seems quite deliberate. They've said they'll act as the secretariat, so providing administrative support, keeping records, that sort of thing.
But not making the decisions.
Exactly. It looks like a move to avoid accusations of, the state trying to control religion. That's always a sensitive point.
Yeah, you can see why they'd want to avoid that. So what are the aims of this committee then? What's it supposed to achieve?
The goals are pretty ambitious, actually. They're talking about developing a legal infrastructure for monitoring and normalizing the Christian sector.
Legal infrastructure.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, establishing this peer review thing with some actual legal teeth, apparently. Not just recommendations. Plus, they plan to consult widely with religious leaders across the country.
Okay.
And they've given themselves a year to come back with recommendations and solutions. It's a big task, considering how diverse Christianity is in SA.
It really is. And this isn't the first time the CRL has looked into this stuff, is it? I remember hearing about an earlier investigation.
You're right. Between 2015 and 2017, they did investigate church transgressions. Reports suggest they faced a lot of pushback then.
Pushback like what? Just disagreement?
More than that, apparently.
Yeah.
Even death threats were mentioned in some reports. And there was this feeling that maybe not enough focus was on the independent churches.
The ones operating outside the big denominations?
Yeah, those ones. The mainline churches often have their own internal structures, but many independents don't.
So why the big push now, if these problems aren't new?
That's the key question, isn't it? The CRL themselves have acknowledged these issues have been rampant for decades. They've even called it a national crisis for Christianity here.
A national crisis. Strong words.
Very. But it seems the Omotoso acquittal was a sort of tipping point, a recent catalyst that really amplified survivor frustrations and this sense that the existing systems just weren't working.
Okay, so that explains the timing. Let's dig into the actual problems they're trying to fix. You mentioned the lack of standards, especially with independent churches.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Like we said, mainline churches often have systems for training, discipline, etc. But with independent churches, the CRL chairperson basically said anyone with money can just start one.
Anyone. No checks.
Often, no. There's no universal system of oversight or accountability. It does sound a bit like the Wild West in some corners,
So what's the proposed solution for that? Just hoping this new committee works.
Well, a key proposal tied to this is vetting and registration of religious leaders.
Ah, okay. Like a professional register.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The CRL is talking about a register with qualifications and, crucially, vetting, especially background checks related to child safety.
That seems essential, given some of the allegations we hear.
Absolutely. They're highlighting the current situation where, someone with cash can basically become a pastor overnight, no scrutiny needed. It raises that tough question, though.
Who decides the qualification?
Exactly. Who gets to say who is a legitimate leader? It's a really difficult area.
It is tricky, isn't it? Balancing religious freedom with protecting people. I mean, you wouldn't go to an unqualified doctor.
Right.
Is the idea that the CRL would set the standards or someone else?
It sounds more like they're pushing towards self-regulation. The idea might be that recognized religious bodies or associations would license their own leaders, setting their own standards, but within some agreed framework.
Okay, so the religious community policing itself, in a way.
Potentially, yes, which might be more acceptable than direct government regulation. Another massive issue that keeps coming up is money.
Ah, yes. Financial accountability. Or lack thereof.
Exactly. Concerns about the commercialization of religion, leaders with incredibly lavish lifestyles.
Still, congregants might be struggling.
Precisely. And the big question, should churches operating like businesses pay taxes? There's even commentary like, if a pastor can afford bodyguards, they should pay tax.
It's a controversial point, but you hear it raised a lot. Is the CRL planning regulations here too?
They intend to make recommendations, yes.
No.
And again, this idea of self-regulation comes up. Maybe the licensing bodies would also oversee financial practices.
So trying to ensure funds are handled properly? That seems important.
Definitely. Then there's this other category they call spiritual transgressions.
Spiritual transgressions, what falls under that?
This is where it gets really complex. It's not just about illegal acts like theft or assault. It's about behaviors that are, well, unethical or exploitative, using people's faith against them.
Like what kind of things?
The examples cited are things like pastors telling people to eat grass or drink petrol for blessings, or demanding inappropriate acts, sexual or otherwise, framed as religious requirements.
Wow, that sounds incredibly manipulative, but hard to police legally, I imagine.
Extremely hard, because you're dealing with deeply held beliefs. Where do you draw the line between, unusual spiritual practice and harmful exploitation? Followers often have unwavering faith.
It's a tightrope walk, isn't it? Protecting freedom of belief versus protecting people from abuse disguised as belief.
Exactly. The CRL seems aware of how difficult it is to legislate this, but they want to find ways to tackle these abuses of faith without stepping on genuine religious expression.
And it's often the most vulnerable people who get targeted, right?
That's a crucial point. Reports often highlight that people facing poverty, women-headed households, they can be particularly susceptible, which makes oversight even more critical.
Has the CRL dealt with specific cases like this before, beyond the big headlines?
Well, they did reference their inquiry into the Kwasiza-Bantu Christian mission.
Oh, yes, I remember that. There were serious findings there.
Very serious. Evidence of rape and abuse was found, and they recommended an apology from the mission. It shows the CRL does have investigative powers already.
And their focus seemed to be on the alleged perpetrators, not just shutting the whole place down.
That seems to be the approach, yes.
Yeah.
Address the individuals involved, unless the whole organization is rotten, basically.
Okay, but surely not everyone is happy about these plans for more oversight.
Oh, definitely not. There's a significant resistance from some religious leaders.
What are their arguments? Religious freedom.
That's the main one. Concerns about state interference, potential bias against certain groups. You hear arguments like, the church is the salt of the earth, it should be involved everywhere without being shackled by regulations.
So that core tension remains. Freedom versus accountability.
It's right at the heart of this whole debate.
And amid all this talk of committees and regulations, what about the people actually harmed? The survivors?
That's vital. The CRL has said they are committed to including survivor voices in this process.
How?
They've mentioned plans for press conferences involving complainants from past cases like Omotosos to give them a platform.
That seems important. You can imagine the frustration for survivors when they see acquittals or cases vanish.
Absolutely. And the feeling that there's no clear place to go for recourse within the religious sphere, unlike, say, medicine or law, where you have professional bodies to complain to.
Yeah, that comparison keeps coming up. If a doctor messes up, there's the HPCSA, a lawyer, the Legal Practice Council. But for a pastor,
it's often much less clear. So this peer review committee, if it works and has real power, could start to fill that gap, at least within Christianity. But enforcement will be key.
And is this purely a South African problem, or do we see similar things elsewhere?
It's definitely not unique to Uday. We saw brief mentions of concerns globally. For instance, issues around megachurches and spiritual transgressions in Japan have been reported.
So it's a wider challenge then.
It really seems to be.
Okay.
Societies everywhere are grappling with how to balance religious freedom with protecting people from harm within those communities. It's that universal tightrope walk.
Right. So just to sort of pull this all together, what we're seeing is the CRL Rights Commission making a pretty significant move here in South Africa.
Yeah, a concerted effort. This Section 22 committee is the main vehicle, aiming for self-regulation within the Christian sector.
And the goals are basically more accountability for leaders, better protection for congregants, and clearer standards all around.
That's the plan. But the challenges are huge. You've got the incredible diversity of churches, strong resistance from some quarters.
And that whole difficulty of defining and dealing with spiritual exploitation.
Exactly. It's incredibly complex terrain they're trying to navigate.
So hopefully as you follow these stories in the news now, you have a bit more context on what the CRL is trying to do, the initiatives underway, and just how complicated this whole issue is. It's about balancing freedom and safety.
And it leaves us with a big question to ponder, really. Thinking about that tension, religious freedom on one hand, the need for accountability on the other, what do you think is the best way forward?
Yeah, how do you address abuse and non-accountability in religious groups while still respecting the right to practice faith freely?
What kind of oversight, if any, actually strikes the right balance? There are no easy answers, are there?
Definitely not. It's something we'll likely be discussing for a while. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
Our pleasure.
If you found this exploration of the CRL's efforts and the surrounding issues insightful, please do show your support, like this discussion, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to The Unseen Wisdom for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. We'll see you next time.